David, hi,
Hello, good to join you.
and thanks ever so much for coming on. So we're very, very grateful for your time. There's so much happening in the world right now, and while I was prepping for this, it occurred to me that virtually every topic in the political sphere right now actually has a health impact. And obviously, we're all about health and doing the best we can for our bodily autonomy and for informed consent and for making sure we look after ourselves. But everything that's happening at the moment has an impact on our spiritual health, our emotional health, our mental health, and our physical health, etc. So I just wonder what you thought about that initially, just that thought that I had, and that came out of left field, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, it does. I mean, what we got at the moment is governments of nations acting in lockstep together to implement Agenda 2030, and most of us have heard of that, and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And there's all these kind of political ideologies and programs that they want to be implemented, which are all linked together. But everything is interrelated. So everything that's been done will have an impact on our health. I mean, clearly, there are some things that are very obvious the having an impact, such as lockdowns and the coerced injections that we've had. But there's other things being implemented, like the 15-minute cities and so on. Now, that has an indirect impact on our health because, of course, it affects our mental health when we can't see people, when we can't travel, when we're restricted. And that, of course, impacts on our physical health as well, because the spiritual, the mental, the physical are all interrelated. So that's absolutely true, and it's a good point.
Thank you. Yeah. Um, it's well, we'll come back to that shortly. I think. I mean, I think where I'd like to start is how you became attracted to the sciences in the first place, and how you ended up teaching them. Where did that come from?
I was Yeah, I mean, back to school days, I was always better in school when I was younger. I was better at maths and science and that kind of thing than in sort of English and the art subjects and the humanities. So I enjoyed it because I was good at it. I understood it, and it was fascinating to me. Especially chemistry and physics. I like the abstractness of chemistry. Actually, it was like something when I first started learning that. It was like, this is like something I've never even thought about, and it's just really, it was really interesting. So I enjoyed it and I was good at it, so I carried on studying it, and then I ended up doing a degree in chemistry. And of course, after your degree, you look for careers and look for jobs. And I took a year out, a gap year, straight after university, and then I went back and I thought, well, I did some youth work in the gap year and with a church, and I enjoyed it. So I thought, well, why not, carry that on? I can become a teacher, and hopefully I can do something positive to build the lives up of young people in a school. So the two kind of went together, and that's how I got involved in science and chemistry, and then got involved in being a teacher as well. And I did that for nearly 20 years. And then I left because I got involved in politics, and the rest is history. I got elected to the London Assembly, and so then I was full time in politics from then on. But that's how I started off in science.
And that understanding of science has obviously stood you in good stead to understand what's actually going on in the world right now, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's appalling, really, how little knowledge MPs and politicians and media pundits and commentators have of science. I mean, not just the facts and the knowledge that you get from studying science, but just the process of science, the basic understanding that, with the specific example that we are all familiar with that's impacted us of the lockdowns, the MPs have no concept that modeling is different to observation and data, which actually gives you real conclusions. So they're making all kinds of policies which impact everything on the basis of dodgy modeling, which get changed any way you like by putting different numbers into a modeling algorithm. And that has impacted us all, obviously, with Professor Ferguson's dodgy modeling that got the MPs to vote through the Coronavirus Act, which caused the lockdowns and so on. And on the very day that they did that, he changed his modelling and said, oh, well, they were told, if you don't vote for this, 500,000 people are going to die. And as soon as they voted it through, they said, oh, sorry, my mistake. It's not 500,000. It'll only be 20 to 50,000, which is no worse than a bad flu season. Sure. But by then, the damage had been done. So it's absolutely appalling, the poor level of knowledge of so many basic things, which I can see through straight away. And, I was calling it out even before it happened. So, but it's shocking.
Is this the problem that it's the politics is a career, so therefore they don't understand anything outside of that bubble of that career?
I mean, you go into one of the big parties, or the old parties as I call them, and you become an MP, and basically you're lobby fodder. You're whipped by the party whips. You're expected to toe the government line or the party line, and you just walk through the lobbies according to what the leadership of your party say. So it's the people that are MPs, a lot of them have no real life experience at all. I mean, they've gone to private schools. Great. You think that would give them an understanding. A lot of them have gone to Oxford and Cambridge, and then they go into work in an MP's office. They become a SPAD and whatever, special advisor, and then they get a candidacy and become an MP. So they've got lots of knowledge, but they haven't got any common sense or any ability to think independently for themselves. So, I mean, you just question what on earth is happening in our educational system, that people go to all of these glorious palaces of learning, but they come out being automatons and actually, just doing what they're told without any critical thinking. And this is the problem, is, I haven't gone through the party machines, as you like. I was invited to join the Tory party, what I call the fake Conservative Party, but I said no. If I had done at that time, I might have been a Tory MP by now, but I thought, if I do this, I will have to toe the line. I will not have any independence of thought and speech. I will be muzzled if I join them. So I decided not to. Now, I've got far less money than I would have done if I'd have done that, but I've got my soul and I've got my freedom, and I'm free to speak as I want, because no one tells me what to say. I just look at what's going on and use my mind to make a judgment on that, so I can speak completely, totally independently on everything. And this is the problem, that MPs are not allowed to do that, and until they can, we're going to continue doing the same things over and over again.
I suspect you would have been a former Tory MP by now.
Yeah, probably. I'd have been in and out. I wouldn't have lasted very long.
Yeah. It seems interesting as well that those with the common sense approach and maybe a more spiritual way of looking at life seem to be the ones that are more awake right now and have an anti-globalist view of the world and a more local view of what should be going on, rather than the way that our current MPs and the opposition are behaving right now.
Yeah, I mean, the MPs you've got are totally on board with the globalist agenda. I mean, some of them because they are aware of it and they know about it and they're involved in the World Economic Forum and they're deliberately pushing it. But others are just useful idiots. I mean, they don't even know, they don't even see it. They've been told that doing this is the right thing. You get this propaganda meme. There's a climate emergency. You've got to do this and this to save the planet. I mean, it's complete nonsense, and I can see through this because it's all predicated on the premise that carbon dioxide is a deadly poisonous gas that's going to kill us all. This is absolute nonsense. I mean, at the levels of carbon dioxide you have, it's not harmful to anything at all. In fact, good for plants. The more plants grow, the world gets greener with more carbon dioxide at the levels you've got at the moment. It's not a problem at all. There are real environmental issues, but it's not carbon dioxide. But they're doing everything they can to say we need to reduce our CO2 emissions. And then that brings in all of the control system, because they get rid of petrol and diesel cars, as the Tories want to do, from 2030, and then they want to bring in electric cars, but of course there's not going to be enough energy for all the electric cars, so then people won't be able to travel as much, and then we'll have the 15-minute cities by then if they get their way, so we'll all be locked into very small zones, and we won't be able to travel in and out of them, and they just can't see this. Some of them, they have no critical thinking to be able to see this is a plan that's going to be taking us here in 5 or 10 years, and they don't understand it. But I can, obviously, I've got the scientific background. Obviously, I'm a Christian as well, so I've got that fundamental sort of foundation of principles which helps me with ethics, and I think the two go together to be able to help me to see and discern what's going on.
And going back to that ethical approach, if we lose that, then and also the ethical approach to medicine as well, then we're just going to have a very, very unhealthy society, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's shocking to me, people talk about the Hippocratic Oath a lot, which is fantastic. It's good. I mean, it was created in the Greco-Roman times, obviously. So they swear an oath to Apollo and certain things. I mean, I wouldn't do that, but you can adjust it to swear an oath to Almighty God, in our Christian context. But that's gone. Now, medics, they don't have to swear the Hippocratic Oath anymore. They don't do it. So when I found that out, that was a shock to me, because you expect that everybody swears this oath, they know it, they practice medicine according to the Hippocratic Oath, but they don't. And, I was looking this up, and it's interesting, the tenets of the oath, the articles of the oath. I mean, the first one, as we all know, is first, do no harm and do make no injury to other people. But, what's happening in medicine is there's a lot of harm being done to people, especially with this coerced injection, this experimental injection. The medics and doctors and nurses are administering to millions, billions of people around the world without even questioning whether it's going to do harm or not. And all of the practice of having a very rigorous safety testing program for this has gone out of the window. Now, any other medicine or so-called vaccine will be tested thoroughly and rigorously through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials, which go on for 8 to 10 years if you do them properly. This was rushed through in 3 months. So clearly there was not proper safety testing. But they did it anyway, and they administered it anyway, knowing that there had not been any proper safety testing. I don't know what's going through people's minds to actually say, well, we're going to go along with this when they know there could be dangers. But millions of medics did this anyway. And if they'd stuck to the Hippocratic Oath and they'd used their common sense, they wouldn't have done this. And now millions of people are suffering and have injuries as a result of this. I mean, it's absolutely appalling. That all the systems and ethics and safety frameworks that we've had in place have just been thrown out of the window, just like that.
Yeah, no, it's just incredible, isn't it? And if you're someone who's administering this disintervention, shall we call it, they're breaking the skin for a start. So they're now putting something into someone's body, which in any other form is an assault. And it's accepted that that's okay because it's an injection, but they're doing that without the prior knowledge of what they're actually injecting and what the ramifications of that would be.
Yeah, absolutely. And you ask, doctors and medics, they've gone to the clinics, if you like, where these things are being injected, and they say, do you know what's in them? And no one can give you a straight answer. So no one has informed consent. In fact, many people were coerced into taking this by government rules, which said, if you don't have it, you can't work. If you don't have it, you can't go to this place or that place or the other place, and you can't travel. So they have restricted our freedoms in the most abhorrent manner to coerce people into getting something which they don't know what it is, and the doctors don't know what it is, but they've just gone along with it anyway. And this is the problem. When tyranny comes along, you have to stand up and say no, and there might be a personal cost to that. But so many people have just gone along to get along. You know,
Yes.
they've done it because it's easier to comply rather than to stand up and question what's happening, especially with the massive propaganda against people who were questioning things. I mean, I questioned this from the very beginning. I was in the London Assembly. I had the chance to question Nadeem Zahawi. At the time, he came to the London Assembly for just half an hour to explain, you know, why everyone should get a vaccine. I questioned him. I was the only one. At the time, there were adverse health events and injuries for people who'd received it in Norway. It was very early on. It was January 2021. And the other Assembly members from all the parties were just like, shut him up, shut him up. And eventually, you know, someone later on asked the question, what are you going to do to imprison people who spread misinformation about the vaccines? And that was the attitude. Yeah. Shut me up, put me in prison for even just questioning something which obviously was questionable and wrong. So there you have it.
And even widening it to the way that the medical profession behaves generally now, it seems like it's just an extension of the same thing. They've closed their minds to holistic treatment. I know from personal experience that the treatment is quite poor. The diagnosis is almost non-existent because they're only treating a symptom. They're not looking at what may have caused the symptom. And the diagnosis is done by computer, screen to screen to screen to screen. And then at the end of that, there's a pharmaceutical product that they're going to recommend you take. Has that been an experience that you've also come across?
Well, you know, personally, I don't go to the doctor or the hospital hardly at all. I mean, I think I've been to the doctors, you know, maybe twice in the last 10 years, and I generally avoid it because I was in London. I don't live in London anymore, but when I did, the care is so terrible because there's so many people per GP. They just want you in and out as quickly as possible, give you a prescription, there you go and buy it. They get their money for the appointment, and that's it. So a lot of it is about getting as many people through the doors as possible to receive the payments, because that's how they get paid, and then give them a prescription rather than spending more time with each patient to actually work out what are the causes of this. There may be symptoms, but there's different causes of different symptoms. Let's address the underlying problem rather than addressing the symptoms, and that's a lot of what you get these days. I think, you know, doctors in accident and emergency units, that they are fantastic. They are amazing. They deal with injuries and so on. The surgeons that do, you know, the things that they do there, they're fantastic. But a lot of the prognosis and the diagnosis is just done in order to sell pharmaceutical products and get them into people's bodies. And if far more needs to be done, we need to completely change the way we do medicine in this country, from something that is, you know, benefits the pharmaceutical companies, if you like, by selling big expensive drugs, to something that is far more holistic, as you say. And you know, one of the things over these 3 years that has led, you know, opened my eyes and as you know, opened a whole new world to me that I'd never considered before, is a holistic health and wholesomeness and so on. So you know, there's good in some of the old stuff, but a lot of it is bad. But there's a lot of good in holistic medicine and, you know, preventative medicine, if you like, and being healthy, living a healthy life, rather than living very, very unhealthy lives and then getting chronic illnesses, so that pharmaceutical companies can keep selling you their products. And the fundamentals of health need to be addressing what we can do to live a healthier lifestyle and create a healthier environment for us. And that's key. And then all of our health will be better. But that seems to be something that isn't even on the agenda in most political parties. It is with us in the Heritage Party, but it's not in the old parties.
Yeah. And I miss the days as well where you used to bump into your GP in the street and they knew who you were. They knew who your kids were. They used to ask how your wife was doing. You know, they knew you. You know, we grew up like that with our doctors. And now if I bumped into my doctor in the street, he probably wouldn't stop. He'd just walk past me, I think.
Well, I mean, that's the same for me. I grew up in a village in Sussex, and it was the same for me. It was a small village. The doctor knew who I was, and knew who my mother was, and knew everybody. And you had the same doctor in the same practice for 20, 30 years, so we get to know people. But these days, there's such a churn. Everything is so temporal. People move about so much. You go to a doctor's, a GP surgery, you might get one doctor one visit, another one another visit. Then some of them are just there for a couple of years, and then you get locums coming in. So there's no continuity. There's no chance to build up a relationship between yourself as the patient and the doctor, who will see you every time over 20 or 30 years because of the temporal nature of things these days. I mean, that's a wider issue to do with the transience of life today in society. And, that doesn't help, because we need to have roots in a place, and that's a good thing. But so many people are rootless these days and move out. So that relationship between patient and doctor in most places has gone. And it's a sad thing.
And is it because the population's too high too in the UK? Are we just overrun with people now?
I think, well, this is a whole other issue. I mean, I think that, we've had mass immigration into the UK since the Tony Blair came into power, and over, 7 prime ministers, I think, from Blair all the way to Sunak now, we've had that, massive demographic change. So, 10 million people coming into the country, who are from abroad, and nothing wrong with a little bit of immigration when it's beneficial, but they've done this for political reasons. I mean, you had the Labour Party saying we're going to rub the right's nose in diversity. It was all done maliciously, and not beneficial purposes. And this has changed society incredibly. There's whole areas of London, for example, Manchester, Bradford, Rotherham, which are completely changed demographically. I mean, the people who were there 30 years ago are not there anymore. Neither are their children or grandchildren. It's a complete total turnover. And so this again creates rootlessness, it creates transience, it destroys roots and destroys communities. And there's been deliberate destruction of communities on a granular level all over the UK by both the big old parties, and that needs to change because it's not healthy for our school.
Yeah. And then extending that on to another big subject I know of yours and certainly of ours because we're part of the campaign, but this is the Stop the World Health Organization power grab campaign and the international health regulations. I know you're well read on this. What could you tell us about that?
Well, it's terrible. I mean, if this goes through, then the World Health Organization will effectively have the power to declare an emergency, a health emergency, but that could be based on climate or something else, which would then give them direct power over the health policy of the nations which are WHO members. I never heard of the International Health Regulations 2005 until the lockdown period. And then you saw that, well, this was put in place 15 years before, which gave them the power to direct nations to have lockdowns, to have injections, they recommended masks and so on. Everything that was being recommended by the World Health Organization was implemented by nations in lockstep with each other all at the same time. So you could see that something was happening that was international in scope, and there was some hidden hand that you didn't know directing the nations from an international level. And this is what it is. It's coming from the World Health Organization in this instance. So the amendment regulations and the new pandemic preparedness treaty they want to bring in will just be a whole other level of international control and direction over the nations that are members. So my position is, well, first of all, we need to vote against these as a nation in the vote when it's going to happen in the World Health Assembly 2024. The vote on this is going to happen in next May. But, with Sunak, he's going to vote for it. He's almost, he's likely to still be the prime minister at that time. So this country's going to vote for it, which is appalling. So we need to get out of the World Health Organization. Organization. We just need to leave and gain our independence again. One of the things in our manifesto, and I fought for when I first got into politics, was national sovereignty. I wanted to leave the EU because I could see how that was taking more national sovereignty away from us. But now the focus of that has changed from the EU to the global bodies, the UN, the World Health Organization, and the World Economic Forum, which is it's a civic organization. It's not a political, it's not it's not given power by the governments directly like the UN, but it is having a huge impact over nation governments. So we need to get out of all of those things and restore our sovereignty and make the decisions that we want to make, which are best for our country, our health.
It doesn't seem that we as people, though, get a say, do we? And as I understand it, the interface between government and the World Health Organization is a non-elected bureaucrat again, who probably would be the same person whether the Conservative Party was in or Labour.
Right, exactly, because they're all beholden to the same agenda. I mean, there's no difference now in policy, or very little difference in policy between fake Conservative, Labour, Lib Dem, Green, and SNP as well. I mean, the SNP wants Scottish independence, but apart from that, they're all on board with the climate agenda, the woke agenda, the COVID agenda, the Ukraine agenda. They're all the same on all of those things. They all want to get us entangled further in these globalist bodies, the World Health Organization, etc. So they're all the same, exactly. There would be no change in the person who's a representative of the country, because Sunak and Starmer, they both go to the World Economic Forum. They both go to these globalist fora, and they're both involved in the agenda. So they're both beholden to taking us in the same direction. Yeah, and the people don't get a say over this. I mean, because the people that are appointed to these organizations as representatives of our country, and the commissioners and high commissioners and ambassadors and so on, I mean, they're selected indirectly. The people don't get a choice over that. The only choice that we do get is every 5 years in a general election. So that's why I'm trying the best I can to create and build a party that will be able to stand in every seat in the next general election and actually give people a choice to vote against these things. We're the only party that says we will come out of the World Health Organization and we will take back autonomy over our health policy. No one else is saying that. And so, it's vital that we have a choice. Up to now, there hasn't been a choice, but I'm trying to create a choice for that to happen. So it's something that's vital to do.
So even if Sunak was still in power at the next vote, and basically signed us up for all these regulations and said, we're now in the hands of the World Health Organization, if you got into power the next time, you would still be able to get us out.
Yeah, we could leave the World Health Organization because it does have a clause in it. You can leave, so anytime we want, we can leave. We don't have to stay a member of the World Health Organization. There's so even if they do sign us up, if we leave, then we will not be beholden to those regulations anymore. We'll be free and independent. It's like we came out of the EU. Yes. We could make a decision to come out of the EU. We can come out of the European Convention on Human Rights if we want. We can come out of the Paris Climate Agreement if we want. We can come out of the World Health Organization if we want. It's possible, and it just needs the right people in Parliament to do that.
Right. Okay. And how are you getting on with recruiting your candidates in order to get the party strong enough ready for that election?
Yeah, well, it's a work in progress. I mean, it's a slow progress at the moment because we're just coming up to 3 years old, and we launched publicly in September 2020. So we're getting more members all the time and more candidates all the time, but we need more. So at the moment, if you're watching and you consider this something you can do, please do come and join us as a member and stand as a candidate, because we need more people to be able to do this. I mean, I know people very kindly say they like what I'm saying and what I'm doing, but I can't do this on my own. I need 650 people to be able to stand in every seat in Parliament in the next general election. So I need many, many more people at the moment. We've got a year to get this together. So now is the time to act and join up. So please do consider that if you can. The future of our nation is in your hands.
What sort of person is a candidate for the Heritage Party? Is there? I know that there's no prescribed person, but I assume there's certain values that this person is going to have that fits with your constitution, as it were.
Yeah, the most important thing is that you agree with our manifesto. So, all our principles and policies are set out there in our manifesto. It's 30 pages long now, so you can read it. And if you like it, then you can join. Because the most important thing is that someone has the ability to defend and promote our manifesto. And that might be, through... You may have media interviews, for example. So if you want to become a candidate, you've got to be fairly confident that you'll be able to speak on a stage. If there's a hustings or if someone puts a camera in your face, you'll be able to answer some questions. But there's lots of people like that who can do that. So so that's the most important thing. I mean, I ask people 3 questions. Do you support our manifesto? Would you be able to handle the media, and also you have to be able to, that you can't be disqualified in any way. I mean, there's various things that disqualify people if they had a criminal record or they've been bankrupt or something. Well, that doesn't apply to many people, but have a look at the manifesto. If you like it, then you can join us. But what I would say is we are specifically a socially conservative party. So look at the socially conservative principles in there, because we in a wider view than looking at health. There's 3 things that I do ask that we do support, and that is that there's 2 sexes, male and female. So all of this trans nonsense that's going into schools, is absolutely appalling. We stand completely against that, and the sexualization of grooming of children in schools. I mean, so we're very, very strong on that. We also say marriage is a man and a woman. It shouldn't have been redefined. And we're pro-life. We're against abortion, which is also another article in the Hippocratic Oath. If you read it, it says that a doctor should not give a woman cause an abortion with a pessary. So, our manifesto is totally in line with the Hippocratic Oath. So if you like that, then I think we're the party for you, and please come and join us and stand.
Right. And is there a possibility that you would join up with other parties if in order to I don't know, to get the numbers, to get the strength?
Well, I get asked that question a lot, but I'm not sure what other parties people mean by that. I mean, sometimes they mean reform. Is that sort of who you're thinking of?
Or maybe reclaim, maybe not so much reform, because I can see there might be a difference of opinion with them.
Yeah, I mean, reform, they pushed no jab, no job quite strongly. I mean, they were totally, it was appalling what they said. And when the government brought in these regulations to say you couldn't continue your job as a care home worker if you didn't have an injection, and reform totally jumped on that. They had agreed with it. So yeah, we would have very, very strong disagreements with them on health policy. I mean, Reclaim, they seem to have 2 members, so Lawrence Fox and Andrew Bridgen. And I would agree with a lot of what they say. I haven't had any sort of formal discussions with them, but, obviously right at the moment, he's standing in the Uxbridge by-election. We're not standing there. We're standing in the Selby and Ainsty by-election. So we'll see what happens with that. I mean, I'm not going to say publicly, what discussions we've had at the moment, but, there's possibilities. But we certainly do want to stand. Our plan at the moment is to stand in all 650 seats. But if someone could agree to all the principles in our manifesto, we'll see what happens with that.
Sure. Okay, great. Well, I'll put all the details of your party in the description below, so people know where to find you. I've read the manifesto, by the way, every word. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, actually.
Thank you.
I think we've done our half an hour. We said we might do that. Went really quickly, didn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, just quick. I'm guessing that you don't miss teaching then.
I don't, I had a good innings at teaching. I enjoyed it at the time. It was a good job, really good job to do when I was younger. It's my 20s and 30s, and early 40s. I taught, and it was great because I found out I could use it to go and travel. So half of my time I was teaching in UK schools, but half the time I was teaching in schools overseas. So, I taught in Botswana and Bosnia and the USA. And 1 year I did sort of a teaching tour for the school I worked in the USA, doing demonstration lessons, which was fantastic. So I really enjoyed it at that time. But now I've moved on from there now, and I'm very, very much enjoying leading the heritage party. I mean, it's something that I've done my time in teaching, and now I'm really enjoying what I'm doing here in politics, and I think it's really vital and essential to do this for the nation as well. So I'm happy with how things have turned out.
Great. No. Well, thanks so much for your time. I'm not going to keep any longer. I know you're very, very busy. You're probably back on GB News again, aren't you? Very soon.
I was there yesterday.
I know.
Right.
I watched you last night. Yeah. So anyway, so congratulations with everything you're doing. Good luck with everything you're doing, and let's hope we can catch up again soon.
Thanks, Ian.
All
Yeah,
right.
good to talk to you.
Take care. Goodbye.